Today we're going to do section 4.8, which is on the quadratic formula and discriminant. First of all, what is the quadratic formula? This can be derived by completing the square of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. If you wanted to solve for x, you can take negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's try one of these. This first equation, the a would be 1, because a is what is in front of x squared. The b would be negative 2, that's what's in front of x, and the constant is c, which in this problem is negative 4. So now if I wanted to solve using the quadratic formula, I would take the opposite of b, or you could write negative 2, okay, because it's negative b, plus or minus the square root of b squared, and when I have a negative b, it's got to be in parentheses, minus 4 times a is 1 times c is negative 4. Okay, we'll complete that square root. And then this is all over, so take that line all the way across, all over 2 times a, which is 1. Okay, now we continue. Negative 2 is positive 2, or the opposite of b is positive 2, plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared is 4. And then when I do this, I think of how many negatives do I have here? I've got 1, 2. So this is going to be plus 4 times 1 times 4 is 16, all over 2. Continuing on, that's going to be 2 plus or minus the square root of 20 over 2. Now this last part, we have to simplify what's in the square root. So it's going to be 2 plus or minus 20. I would break up into 4 times 5, because 4 is the greatest perfect square that goes into 20. Okay? Now continuing on down here, I'm going to rewrite this as 2 plus or minus. Now the square root of 4 is 2. So it'd be 2 square root 5 is left, all over 2. Now, the very last step is to simplify this. And you can only do this if you can take something out of all three things. These all have a 2 in front. So if I factor out a 2, you're going to have to do it this way, okay? So it'd be like 2 over 2, which is 1, plus or minus. And now I'm going to take these, and those 2's are going to factor out and just leave me with the square root of 5. So 1 plus or minus the square root of 5 is going to be my final answer for that equation. Next one, a would be 1, b would be 6, c would be 58. Now it's just a matter of plugging in. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. Okay? And that's going to be all over 2 times a, which is again 1. Now, moving down, this is going to be negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36, and that's going to be minus because there's only this one minus sign. And then 4 times 1 times 58, well, that's going to be 232, all over 2. Now, if I continue to do this work, it's going to be negative 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 196. Okay, negative 196 all over 2. That's going to leave us with negative 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 196. First of all, I know there's going to be an I. And the cool thing about 196 is that actually is a perfect square, and it's going to be 14. Okay, so it's going to be negative 6 plus or minus 14i over 2. And remember, we need to write this as a complex number in standard form. So again, we're going to take these two over each other. Negative 6 over 2 is negative 3. Then we have the plus or minus. And then we take 14i over 2, which is 7i. And that is written as a complex number. Real part first, imaginary part second. Next problem. Before we can do anything, we need to make sure that we have this in standard form. So I need to subtract the 4n squared, I need to add the n, and I need to add the 4 to the other side. Okay, so I just took this, did the opposite, put it over here. So now when I add these up, it's going to be 9n squared plus 12n minus 5 equals 0. I just brought all this over to the other side, so it's going to be 0. Now, my A is 9, my B is 12, and my C is negative 5. Plug it in. X equals the opposite of B, negative 12, plus or minus the square root of 12 squared minus 4 times A is 9 times C is negative 5. All over 2 times 9. Continuing on, negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 144, and this is going to be plus this time, and then we have 36 times 5, which is 180. 4 times 9 is 36, times 5 is 180, all over 18. Okay, now we continue to do the math. Negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 144 plus 180 is 324. And that's going to be over 18. Okay, continuing to do the math, negative 12 plus or minus, now the square root of 324, that's actually a perfect square, that's going to be 18. And then it'd be over 18 again, okay? Now when I do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take care of the plus and minus at 2 separate times. So I'm going to start with the plus. First I have negative 12 plus 18, which is 6. So it'd be 6 over 18, which is 1/3. There's one answer, okay? Now I'm going to go back and do the subtraction. Negative 12 minus 18 is negative 30 over 18. And when I reduce that, it's going to be negative 5 over 3. So I have two real number answers there, 1/3 and negative 5/3. And this concludes section 4.8, part 1.